Think about a time when you hesitated to share your ideas or give feedback at work, in school, or in one of your social groups. What made you hold back? Hi everyone, I'm Tasha Blarikob, founder of SideQuest Strategic Management Consulting. My background is in nonprofit fundraising and program management. I have over a decade of experience working on and leading teams in a variety of industries, from customer service and retail to public higher education and Main Street nonprofits. My career is dedicated to empowering individuals and communities to flourish through strategic initiatives, fostering creativity, and building a sense of place and connection. My hope is to bring this knowledge together to help small businesses and organizations to address barriers to growth and to navigate dynamic challenges to seize long-term opportunities. I would greatly appreciate it if you would give this video a like, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. You can find me at SideQuest MGT across all social media. Now that I got that out of the way, let's get started. Do you remember when I asked you to think about a time when you hesitated to share your thoughts or give feedback? If you can, think about the specific reasons behind your hesitation. Was it a fear of judgment or rejection? A lack of confidence in your knowledge? Or maybe a concern about how others might react? Well, today, I want to talk to you about a key dynamic that affects our willingness to share in situations with complex power structures and can affect every aspect of life. Psychological safety. Psychological safety isn't just a fancy buzzword. It's the foundation for meaningful collaboration and growth. Today, I'm going to focus on the impact of psychological safety on the workplace and professional teams, but these are concepts that apply across all facets of life. I have included all of my sources in the Google document linked below in the description, and I encourage you to check those out as well. I hope this video can serve as a toolkit for you and your organization to find manageable and holistic ways to build creative and safe environments where you and your team can be your authentic selves, share innovative ideas, and even make mistakes. Let's break this down together. So what is psychological safety anyway? Well, psychological safety is basically the idea that you can take risks, voice your ideas, ask challenging questions, and admit mistakes without fear of judgment or reprisal. Amy Edmondson, Harvard professor and author of The Fearless Organization, coined a definition of psychological safety as felt permission for candor. In other words, you feel safe to share your honest ideas and feedback without fear of retribution. Psychological safety is not about toxic positivity or ignoring mistakes. It's about fostering an environment of courageous learning. A space where everyone is encouraged to share ideas, admit and learn from mistakes, challenge norms, and address disagreements constructively. A place where blame and ridicule are replaced with curiosity and empathy. This kind of environment allows for vulnerability to transform into growth opportunities, fostering innovation, trust, and continuous improvement for both individuals and your organization. Now, you might be thinking, why is this concept so important? By creating an environment with psychological safety, you remove the need for personal barriers of communication such as defensiveness, blame, and even using impression management and coded language. Impression management is when you shape how others perceive you by modifying behavior, communication, or appearance to fit into an acceptable norm or avoid ridicule. Whereas coded language is subtle or indirect expressions that convey a message or idea without explicitly stating it, sometimes used to exclude or signal belonging to a specific group. I would like to note that there are a lot of cultural complexities around coded language, and I am not saying it is inherently a negative. I am speaking specifically of the experience of coded language being used to exclude team members or make working environments uncomfortable. To simplify, impression management is about managing perceptions of yourself, while coded language is about managing the delivery of a specific message. This culture thrives when leaders value honesty and integrity, and team members trust and support one another in pursuing their shared goals. By fostering environments with a strong sense of psychological safety and shared goals, you remove the need for these personal defenses and create space for authenticity, innovation, and creativity. Psychological safety allows teams to balance healthy conflict with mutual respect, enabling open feedback and collaborative problem solving. Now, this does not mean that mistakes are ignored, but rather that they're treated as an opportunity to learn and grow. And not all mistakes are the same. Some errors require more nuanced responses than others. In recent years, human errors have been classified into 3 main categories. According to reporting on psychsafety.com, mistakes can be broken up into slips and lapses, errors made by competent people. None of us execute a task perfectly every time, even one we're extremely competent at. Mistakes, errors as a result of decisions and actions that, although thought to be correct at the time, turned out to be wrong. And violations, deviation from procedures and policies, either deliberate, knowing the rules and breaking them, or erroneous, intentionally disregarding the rules. So, going off this idea, of course, intentional violations should have consequences, and we want to hold ourselves and others to a high professional standard. However, if we punish people for honest mistakes instead of collaborating to improve the system that contributed to them, the errors won't decrease. They will just go unreported until they become too big and too numerous to ignore. Ultimately, it's about creating an environment where people feel safe enough to be their authentic selves. With all of that, you're probably thinking, creating this kind of space isn't easy. And you're right. It takes effort, trust, and continuous intentional action. So how can we create spaces that are psychologically safe? To build psychologically safe spaces, first, we have to look inward at how we're living our day-to-day lives. Let's talk about 5 fundamental practices that help us build psychological safety in our everyday lives. 1. Living authentically and with integrity. This means aligning your actions with your values. For example, if honesty is a core value, strive to communicate truthfully even in challenging situations. 2. Setting boundaries. Boundaries help you protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being. Setting boundaries is not merely about the act of saying no to requests, obligations, or situations that do not serve you. It is also fundamentally about creating the space and opportunity to say a meaningful and intentional yes to the commitments, relationships, and priorities that align with your core values and contribute to your overall well-being and purpose. But more on that in a bit. 3. Communicating clearly and directly. Avoid the temptation to sugarcoat or escape tough conversations. Compassionate and direct communication builds trust. 4. Actively listen to others. Active listening means giving your full attention to someone. Listen to understand, not just to respond. It's about hearing their words, asking clarifying questions, and paying attention to the emotions and intentions behind them. 5. Respecting and upholding agreements. Reliability builds trust. When you make commitments, follow through on them in a timely and consistent manner whenever possible. These are practices that build over time and are based in self-awareness and compassion. Baby steps are important to keep growth manageable. In fact, let's practice a moment of self-reflection. Pause for a moment and reflect on the following questions. What does it mean to live with integrity to you? How do you feel about setting boundaries? What is a baby step that you can take to practice living authentically? It's small, intentional choices in our everyday lives that pave the way for trust and openness in groups. Though we can't control every environment, we can choose how we interact with others and conduct ourselves. A key factor in this is how we communicate with others and how we talk to ourselves. Communication is a cornerstone of psychological safety and building long-term trust-based relationships. Effective and compassionate communication foster an environment where people feel heard, respected, and valued. Here's what to focus on. Direct versus passive communication. Be clear and straightforward, but always empathetic. Passive communication can create confusion, frustration, and resentment, while direct communication builds clarity, reliability, and mutual understanding. You can be trusted to mean what you say. Nonviolent communication, or NVC, resolves conflict with empathy and understanding. This involves focusing on expressing thoughts, feelings, and needs in a way that fosters connection rather than division. This approach involves 4 key components: observing without judgment, expressing feelings honestly, identifying underlying needs, and making clear, respectful requests. By avoiding blame, judgment, and defensiveness, NVC helps create a space where all parties feel heard and valued. This could be a whole video in and of itself, and I might cover that in the future. But for now, if this is of interest to you, I recommend looking into the book, The Art of Nonviolent Communication by Micah Salabarrios. And active listening. Listen to truly understand, not just to respond. Practice reflecting back on what you heard to ensure clarity. This can look like repeating back or paraphrasing, as long as you're not using the opportunity to circle back or prove your own point. The last, if slightly more subjective factor, is the unspoken elements. Your tone, body language, and even the platform you choose to communicate on can make or break a conversation. Ultimately, effective and compassionate communication comes down to consistency and understanding. If you approach communicating with patience and a desire to understand, common ground and clarity can be found. And then, even when you do the work and lead by example, sometimes other people are not willing to meet you in the middle or deliberately sabotage your efforts. This is when boundaries come in, because sometimes we have to set limits on the exposure we have to other people's choices. Boundaries. They're a complex topic, and everyone talks about them, but what do they actually mean? Depending upon who you ask, you'll probably get a dozen different answers. So for the purpose of this video, I'm using a definition from the University of Edinburgh. Personal boundaries are guidelines, rules, or limits that a person creates to identify for themselves what are reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for other people to behave around them, and how they will respond when someone steps outside those limits. So, working off that definition, take a moment and imagine your mind and energy as a garden, a place where your emotional well-being thrives. But like any garden, it needs care and protection. Without boundaries, you risk letting in chaos, overwhelm, and even harm. With boundaries, you create space for balance, peace, and growth. So the question is, how might you protect a garden? Maybe build some fences or gates? I like to apply this logic to the idea of setting boundaries and ask, do you need fences or gates? Think of fences as non-negotiable limits. They're rigid, protective, and absolute. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. For example, let's say a coworker strongly values work-life balance, so they set up the boundary that they never answer emails after 6 p.m. That's a fence, a clear, unmovable boundary that protects their time and prevents burnout. If someone tries to cross it, they don't respond, period. But while fences create security, they can also limit connection. If interactions are consistently walled off, you might find yourself isolated. That's where gates come in. Gates provide a middle ground. They open when you allow them to, but only to people or situations you trust. For example, a team leader wants to support open communication, but they also want to prevent negativity from spiraling. Instead of allowing discussions to devolve into unproductive venting, no boundaries, or enforcing a strict written HR submission process, a rigid fence, they set up structured monthly meetings where employees can share concerns constructively. That's a gate, open but manageable. Also, a quick note, Flexible does not equal negotiable. You can find a middle ground that you're comfortable with and still hold a boundary. And generally, no one should be trying to negotiate with you to change your boundaries. In both of the examples, the individuals are creating clear expectations, not to control others, but to protect their own well-being. So, do you need fences or gates? Well, the answer will depend on your situation. Sometimes you will need strong walls to heal, set expectations, and regain trust, while other times you will want gates to foster connection and openness. Last, I want to touch on how boundaries exist in every part of life, shaping how we interact with the world and how we let it interact with us, maybe even in ways we never realized. Social. What views and policies do you support? What discourse do you engage in? Financial. Where do you spend your money? And who benefits from your resources? Career. What kind of work environment do you accept? How do you set limits on responsibilities? Time. How do you prioritize your time? Who gets access to it? Physical. Who has permission to be in your space and experience intimacy with you? Verbal. How do you communicate and what kind of language will you not tolerate? Emotional. How you speak to and about yourself and how people treat you emotionally. You'll see I've also included some baby steps for setting boundaries, and you can find this graphic on my Instagram if you have any more questions. At the end of the day, boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about protecting your energy, preserving your peace, and deciding who gets access to your time and on what terms. So, as we apply this to a professional team setting, you will find what you need to thrive through asking questions and openly listening to the answers. The goal is to protect everyone's well-being while creating an environment where your team can grow and thrive together. Psychological safety is especially crucial in the workplace and is one of the most important factors in a healthy, high-performing team. When employees feel confident that they won't be embarrassed, punished, or dismissed for speaking up, they're more likely to take risks, share innovative ideas, and collaborate effectively. Without psychological safety, even the most talented teams can struggle with disengagement, fear of failure, and lack of creativity. Let's take a look at one of the most well-known studies on team effectiveness, Project Aristotle. A research team at Google, led by Julia Rozalski, set out to uncover the key factors that make teams effective. Their initiative, Project Aristotle, aimed to answer the question, what makes teams at Google effective? Initially, they hypothesized that success would come from structured hierarchy, top performers, experienced management, and unlimited resources. However, their findings revealed something surprising. Who was on the team mattered far less than how the team interacted together. The most successful teams were those built around mutual respect and personal value. Team members needed to feel safe sharing ideas, asking questions, addressing concerns, and making mistakes without fear of judgment or humiliation. And at the top of their list of success factors? You guessed it, psychological safety. For those interested in a deeper dive into Project Aristotle, check out Google's Rework initiative linked in the description below. Looking at this list, I would like to note the absence of trust, especially because the former head of industry at Google, Paul Santagata, is quoted saying, "There's no team without trust." Now, I would like to say I totally agree with this quote, but trust is only one part of the puzzle. While psychological safety and trust are closely related and interdependent, they're not the same thing. Psychological safety is about the group's shared norms, what it means to be part of the team. It's defined by how members believe they are viewed and treated by their peers. Trust is an interpersonal belief. It's the confidence that another person is reliable, competent, and will act with integrity. Trust is built over time through consistent actions, honesty, and dependability. In other words, trust is about how one person views another, while psychological safety is about how a group interacts as a whole. You can trust someone on your team, but if the group lacks psychological safety, you may still hesitate speaking up in meetings or challenging an idea. Both are important, but psychological safety creates an environment where trust can thrive, leading to stronger collaboration, innovation, and team performance. Once you start putting in the work to build these environments, you will be able to start honing in on the 4 types of psychological safety. 1. Inclusion safety. This meets the need to connect and belong. You feel safe to be yourself and are accepted for who you are. This can mean celebrating diverse perspectives and ensuring everyone feels welcome. 2. Learner safety. This satisfies the need to learn and grow. You feel safe to exchange in the learning process, asking questions, giving and receiving feedback, experimenting, and making mistakes. For instance, a manager who views errors as learning opportunities creates an environment where innovation can thrive. 3. Contributor safety. Meets the need to make an impact. You feel safe using your skills and abilities to make a meaningful contribution. When team members know their work matters, they're more engaged and motivated. 4. Challenger safety. This satisfies the need to make things better. You feel safe to speak up and challenge the status quo when you think there's an opportunity to change or improve. Encouraging respectful debate can lead to breakthrough ideas and improvements. Let's put it into practice. Okay, now that we have built up our knowledge of what psychological safety is, let's consider some workplace scenarios. For each one, consider the following. What type of psychological safety is the scenario referring to? Does the situation support psychological safety in the workplace? Does the situation build trust with a coworker? Scenario 1. After having a question or idea publicly belittled, you keep concerns to yourself until they are unavoidable, and you only attend mandatory meetings, preferably with your camera off. This represents challenger safety. If you are hesitant to address changes that need to be made or feel alienated, consider what barriers are coming up and who might be able to help you address them. Avoiding engagement limits opportunity to foster meaningful change and growth. Scenario 2. You complain to your work best friend about the team in the break room during lunch. This is demonstrating inclusion safety. Though connecting and sharing concerns with coworkers can be validating, gossiping erodes trust and can create a toxic environment. If you have concerns about a team member's behavior, try to address it appropriately with the parties involved or management as needed. Scenario 3. After a tense disagreement about the direction of a project, you take a moment to acknowledge the tension and proactively ask the team if anyone has questions or needs clarification to move forward smoothly. You are supporting learner safety. By addressing the tension and potential confusion with openness and a willingness to listen, you create a space for reflection and honest dialogue. Demonstrating vulnerability, humility, and a commitment to improvement encourages others to do the same, strengthening team morale and collaboration. Great job! As you have probably figured out, creating a culture of psychological safety doesn't happen by accident. It requires intentional effort and daily practice. Here are 6 strategies to help foster psychological safety in the workplace, empowering teams to collaborate openly, navigate conflict constructively, and build a foundation of trust. 1. Approach conflict as a collaborator, not an adversary. This shifts the focus from winning to problem solving. 2. Recognize and acknowledge your mistakes. By modeling the openness and vulnerability you want to encourage, you create an environment where others feel safe doing the same. 3. Speak human to human. Show empathy and acknowledge other people's emotions. Assume good intent and act with the same integrity. 4. Replace blame with curiosity. Instead of assigning fault, ask questions to understand what happened. 5. Ask for constructive feedback on your delivery. This shows you're open to growth and value other people's perspectives. 6. Measure psychological safety regularly. Use practices such as surveys, anonymous feedback, or one-on-one check-ins to gauge how people feel. Measuring psychological safety starts with asking questions, listening to the answers, and tracking change over time. By regularly assessing how comfortable team members feel speaking up, sharing ideas, and addressing challenges, organizations can identify areas for improvement and build a more supportive work environment. Here are several questions to help measure psychological safety and guide meaningful change. When assessing psychological safety, start by asking yourself, can I make mistakes at work without fear of repercussions? Do I feel safe and encouraged to share new ideas? Do my coworkers or supervisors ridicule me when I speak up or make a mistake? Do coworkers and supervisors recognize and acknowledge their mistakes? Do I feel valued and appreciated? And you can ask your team, do you feel safe sharing your opinion and giving myself or others feedback? Do you feel like your mental and physical well-being is prioritized? Do you think mistakes are seen as opportunities to learn and grow? Do you feel heard and valued? How can I improve my communication for better understanding? By reflecting on the answers to these questions, you can identify areas for improvement and create a safer environment for everyone. Find the method of feedback collection that works for your team and be consistent with follow-up and implementing appropriate changes. I have a bingo game version of the assessment questions you can use for free, linked in the description below and on my Instagram, @SideQuestMGT. In the midst of all of this personal growth and team building activities, you might find receiving criticism can be tough. This is normal, but it's a skill worth mastering. Here are some tips. Assume good intent. Most feedback is meant to help, not hurt. Don't take it personally. It's not an attack. Separate your identity from the feedback. Listen to learn, not to respond. Focus on understanding the other person's perspective. Ask clarifying questions. This ensures you fully grasp the feedback and its intent. Remember shared goals. Aligning on common objectives can make criticism feel more constructive. Psychological safety isn't just about the workplace. It's about every relationship in our lives. By living authentically, setting boundaries, and communicating compassionately, we can create spaces where everyone feels valued and empowered. If you want to build a stronger, more innovative team, your next mission is to bring psychological safety to your workplace. Pick the quest that fits your journey best and use #SideQuestMGT to share your experience and see what quests others are choosing. Let me know in the comments which quest you're taking on and how it went. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights in thriving together. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.